Life expectancy was 49 years of age. I mean, you were born, you had kids, and died. Now we have an increased lifespan. We have all the luxury goods. Instead of yelling out the window, which is what my grandparents did to communicate, we have the internet. And so when you look at it the long term, decade for decade, you realize the enormous progress that we've made, and that's why I tend to be more optimistic than the average person.
And were your parents optimistic as well, or was that something that you had to cultivate yourself growing up?
Their attitude was, what is past is past. You pick up the pieces and you move on. You learn from it, and you want to make sure you don't break it again. You want to make sure it doesn't happen again, but then you move on. That was their basic philosophy of life. There was one moment that changed my entire life. My whole trajectory got derailed. What happened was the great scientist had just died. Everyone was talking about it, and I'll never forget, a picture was flashed on the evening news in all the newspapers. It was a picture of his desk. And the caption said something like, "This is the unfinished manuscript of the greatest scientist of our time." So I said to myself, why couldn't he finish it?
And this is Einstein, right?
Yeah, this was Albert Einstein. What was so hard that he could not finish this one problem? So I went to the library and I found out that it was Albert Einstein, and it was the theory of everything, the unified field theory. Einstein wanted an equation 1 inch long that would allow us to, quote, read the mind of God. So I said to myself, wow, that's for me. That's what I want to work on for the rest of my life, to finish that book. Well, today we think we can do it. We think it is string theory. And that's what I do for a living. That's my day job.
That's pretty incredible though for an 8-year-old. When you go home and tell your parents, hey, and I'm just imagining like this 8-year-old kid saying, I'm gonna go finish Einstein's book, the thing he spent the last 30 years of his life working on and couldn't, I think I'll be able to do that. How do people respond to you?
Well, first of all, I didn't know what I was getting into. I thought it was a homework problem. I thought, well, you talk to your mom, right? You just ask your mom, gee, why can't I figure this problem, right? What could be so hard that the greatest scientist of our life couldn't finish it? So I said to myself, I want to be part of this mission. I want to be part of this grand journey to complete this theory of everything. So when I talk to young people today, I see that same moment, that epiphany, when they buy their first telescope. They get their first astronomy book, that really energetic glow that they have, saying that, wow, the universe is incredible, it's beautiful. So we're born scientists. We're born scientists until we hit the greatest destroyer of scientists known to science. The greatest destroyer of scientists is junior high school. Every day we lose hundreds of thousands of junior high school kids who think that science is boring. They think that science is useless, memorizing facts and figures they're never going to use again.
Was there something different going on when you were in middle school that kept you from falling prey to that? Like, what did you do to not get eaten alive by junior high?
Well, not only was I fascinated by the story of Einstein, he could not finish his great theory. Saturday mornings, I would watch television. And guess who was on TV? Flash Gordon. I mean, rocket ships, ray guns, invisibility shields. I mean, what's not to love? And I said to myself, wow, there's a whole world out there, the world of the future. Then a few years later, I began to figure it out. I began to figure out that, well, yeah, Flash got all the credit. He got the girl, blah, blah, blah. But he didn't make the series go. Who made the series go was Dr. Zarkov, the scientist. He was the one who invented the starship. He invented the invisibility shield. He was the one who kept the whole series going with his inventions. And then I began to realize Dr. Zarkov is a physicist. I didn't know the word. I began to realize that Einstein was a physicist. So you see, physics not only unlocks the secrets of the universe, it also predicts the future. So when people come up to me and say, Professor, what has a physicist done for me lately? I tell them, we physicists invent one thing, the future. We invented the transistor. We invented the laser. We invented television. We invented the World Wide Web. We created the space program. We created the X-ray machine, radar, radio, television. All of that came from the minds of physicists. So I said to myself, that's what I want to do for a living. I want to make sure that I can be part of the future, to do what Dr. Zarkov did for Flash Gordon, to make the future possible. So that's what we physicists do. We invent the future.
So where do you have people start?
Well, when you look at children and you look at all the different theories about what makes successful kids, you realize that almost all the theories are wrong because they haven't been verified. Like, for example, high IQ. You have a lot of high IQ people who become marginal members of society. And so what is the one psychological test that correlates with success in life? And I found out that it's the marshmallow test. It's the test that has survived every challenge. You track students for 30 years in different countries, and you find that they are more successful, they have a lower divorce rate, higher income, higher status in society. So what is this marshmallow test? You get kids and ask them, do you want a marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows a few hours from now? And the kids that want the marshmallow now tend to be those that want shortcuts, those that don't want to do the hard work. They want the quick kill. They grab that marshmallow. But the other ones say, no, wait a minute. If I wait 2 hours, I can get 2 marshmallows. I can hold out. There's a pot of gold waiting for me. They're not going to take the shortcut. And so you say to yourself, well, that's a test for kids. But then you track them decade by decade by decade. And then you find out, oh my God, these are the ones who go to college, the ones who hold out for that advanced degree, that don't want that simple payoff now, but are going to delay gratification into the future. And so I realized that that's the key to success in life, not just science, but in life. Don't take the shortcuts. I think that, for example, it turns out that if you do the same thing with poor children and the same thing with middle-class children, it turns out that poor children will, in general, go for the quick kill because they know that things disappear real fast. If there's money in the house, it's gone in the future. So they learn something. And so one of the reasons why poor kids will opt for the marshmallow now is because things disappear. People steal it. People grab it and run away with it, and there you are with nothing. Take it now. That's their attitude. And they learn that. And other people can realize that going to college. Gee, there are occupations out there that give you a good income. If you can show people that there is a pot of gold out there, that yes, you hold out, you go to college, you'll learn the discipline, there's a pot of gold out there. You can learn to appreciate that fact. And I think, when I think about Einstein, he spent the last 30 years of his life chasing after the theory of everything. He spent 10 years of his life chasing after what we now call relativity. When Einstein was 16 years old, he asked himself a simple question: can you outrace a light beam? It took him 10 years to solve that problem. When he was 26 years old, he figured it all out, and that was relativity. And that changed the entire world. So talk about a marshmallow. Here's a man who said he's going to spend 10 years of his life answering a question, can you outrace a light beam? And the answer is no. The speed of light is the ultimate velocity in the universe. Einstein is the cop on the block. So here's a man who really held out for that marshmallow. When Einstein got relativity, he didn't do it using pure mathematics. One of my favorite Einstein quotes is when he talked to children, he said to children, no matter how much difficulty you have with mathematics, mine were worse. So what was it that drove Einstein? It was a picture. He had a picture of himself being 16 years old, running neck and neck with a light beam. What would light look like if you could race right next to it? And then when he got general relativity, he had another picture that is like a trampoline net, gravity being nothing but the bending of space and time as a fabric. But on his third try, that is to get a theory of everything, he failed because he had no picture. And my other favorite Einstein quote is, unless you can explain something to a child as a picture, the theory is probably worthless.
You've also given a really cool picture of Newtonian physics that is certainly was new for me. I'd never heard it before, where you said to clear your head and think you like to go ice skate. And you said that in that moment, in fact, Why is ice skating so profound for you as it relates to Newtonian physics?
You know, we've been around for hundreds of thousands of years, but we never came up with the laws of motion because things bump into each other, there's friction. It's complicated the way things move. But on an ice skating rink, it's pure, it's pristine. All the secondary frictions are eliminated, and that's the arena of Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton's 3 laws of motion are staring you right in the face every time you go ice skating. So I'm not sure if Newton ice skated, but on an ice skating rink, everything is washed clear. You clearly see the physical laws of motion. And that's why when Einstein comes along and goes beyond Isaac Newton, Einstein starts with clocks, rockets, meter sticks. So he starts with things that you can see and touch, a physical picture. And so all great ideas come from a picture. For Newton, it was this arena. You know, Shakespeare said that we're all actors on a stage. We make our entrances and exits. We're all actors on the stage of life. That's the Newtonian idea, that the stage of life is static and we make our entrances and exits. That's the Newtonian idea. Einstein comes along and says, not so fast. The stage is warped. The stage can have trapdoors. When you walk along the stage of life, you think there's a force moving you left and right because the stage is uneven. That's the theory of gravity. So all of it can be explained in this very simple arena. Now with string theory, we think there could be trapdoors in the stage of life, wormholes. We think there could be all sorts of bizarre things that don't exist in the ordinary Newtonian idea. And that gets us into cosmology and the Big Bang. So we see that all great ideas come from very simple physical pictures. Well, in my book, The Future of the Mind, I had to ask that exact question. We physicists are now probing the thought processes of the human brain. We want to know about what is mental illness. We want to know what is schizophrenia. Why does the brain go crazy? And what is the creative process? And what is intelligence? And what we find out is that when we compare ourselves to animals, we realize that our human brain really is different from the animals. First of all, we have alligators. Alligators understand space. Very good understanding of space. They find prey, they find mates. They know where they are in terms of space. Then you have monkeys, and then you have mice, and then you have dogs. They're social animals. They have not just spatial hierarchy, they have social hierarchy. They know who's the top dog. They know how to defer to other members of the tribe. That's social consciousness. Then what do we have? If animals like alligators have spatial consciousness, if dogs have social consciousness, what kind of consciousness do we have? And I did some research on it, and I found out that what we have in the brain that is different from animals is we understand time. We understand the future. We constantly daydream, we scheme, we plot. We constantly think about what could be. Now let's do an experiment. Go home tonight and teach your dog the concept of tomorrow. Try it. Teach your dog the concept of tomorrow, the next week, the next year, and you realize you can't. Animals live in the present, and that's what I think intelligence is. Intelligence is being able to map the future, simulate the future. So if you get an experiment of people with low IQ and high IQ, put them in the same room, and you give them the same job, rob a bank. You'll find out that the low IQ people probably do a much better job of robbing a bank, plotting the bank robbery, than high IQ people who get all messed up with legal implications and stuff like that. The point is that you can have some very smart robbers because they see the future. And that's what we humans do that animals cannot. We constantly daydream. We constantly create worlds that don't exist. Animals live in worlds that do exist, that is the present. They don't live in the past. They have almost no memory to speak of. Animals have very little memory. They have some, but very minimal. We, on the other hand, we obsess with memory, and we obsess with the future. And to me, that's what intelligence is, the ability to see the future, to simulate the future in complex, realistic ways. Aristotle once said that all of man's problems stem from the fact that he cannot sit in a chair still for hours. In other words, we get distracted. How many of us can sit in a chair and single-mindedly work out one problem? No, after a few minutes, we begin to get fidgety. We want to turn on the TV set and listen to music or whatever. But yeah, Aristotle said all of men's problems can stem from the fact that we get distracted. So I think one of the things I teach my kids is, when I teach physics to students, I teach them that you have to have butt power. You have to have the ability to sit down. This is what I tell the kids. Sit down, work on a physics problem till blood comes out of your forehead. You see, we have no gene for physics. There's no gene for science. We have a gene for gossip. We have a gene for superstition. We have a gene for jumping to conclusions and making fools of ourselves. We have no gene for science. Science is an acquired taste. There's no gene for it. Therefore, when I teach kids how to become a scientist, yeah, you got to sit down and have butt power. You got to sit down and in a quiet room with a book and sweat blood sometimes. You have to sit down, grit your teeth, and do it. I realized every time I was struggling with all these equations, there was that pot of gold out there. I wanted to understand Einstein. I wanted to understand the quantum theory. I wanted to be at the cutting edge of science, even if it meant that I had to, not go play outside. I had to sit in my chair and simply crank out the math. You got to pay your dues.